It started with coffee. Isn't that how it always begins? I met Emily on a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky is lazy and the air smells like rain that never comes. I was sitting at the window of a little corner cafe in Charleston, South Carolina, my usual spot, laptop open, pretending to write something meaningful. She walked in like she owned time. Hair wet from the drizzle, hoodie 3 sizes too big, and a novel tucked under her arm like it was a secret. She looked at me, just for a second, and smiled like she already knew me. That 1 second ruined me. She ordered a black coffee, sat at the table across from mine, and opened her book. But she didn't read. Not really. She kept glancing up, catching me watching her, pretending not to smile. I laughed quietly. I think she heard it. She looked up again and raised an eyebrow. "You laughing at me or at the world?" she asked. That was her first sentence to me. Not hello. Not small talk. A question that felt like a challenge. I answered without thinking. Little bit of both. Depends on the chapter. That was it. The beginning of everything. We talked for 3 hours that day. About books, dreams, heartbreaks we never quite healed from. She was quick-witted and curious, the kind of woman who asked questions that made you wonder why no one ever asked them before. She told me she worked as a teacher, 3rd grade. "The chaos is beautiful," she said. "Kids know more about love than adults do." I didn't want the afternoon to end. When she got up to leave, she hesitated. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. "Every day," I replied. And I meant it. Days turned into weeks, and we fell fast and deep. The kind of love that feels like gravity. We'd walk through the historic streets at night, hand in hand, lantern lights flickering on cobblestones. She'd dance in the rain like the world was watching and she didn't care. I was the opposite, always cautious, always calculating, but with her I let go. One night, we sat on the rooftop of her apartment, wrapped in a blanket, city lights glowing like fireflies. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I feel safe with you. Like nothing bad can happen here." That line stayed with me. Still does. She had this way of making silence feel like music. We didn't always need words. Just being in the same space, breathing the same air, felt like home. Our chemistry was effortless. She was chaos and color. I was logic and lines. But somehow we fit. Not like puzzle pieces, more like fire and oxygen. She lit up everything I'd buried. Made me feel things I forgot I was capable of feeling. I introduced her to my family that Christmas. My mom cried after meeting her. Said she'd never seen me look at anyone like that before. My younger brother pulled me aside and said, "Don't screw this up, man." I laughed, but there was a part of me even then that felt a quiet fear. Like I didn't deserve something this good. We traveled that spring. Drove up the coast in my beat-up Chevy, windows down, music loud, her feet on the dashboard. She made me pull over in every small town just to try pie from local diners. We took Polaroids like it was the 90s, stuck them on the dashboard. She made moments feel eternal. On our 6-month anniversary, I gave her a bracelet with a small compass charm. She laughed and asked, "So I don't get lost?" I looked her in the eye. "So I always find my way back to you." That night, under stars and southern skies, I told her I loved her. She didn't say it back, not right away. She looked at me, eyes soft and shimmering, and said, "You're the safest place I've ever known." I understood. That was her way of saying it. We were fire and calm, passion and peace. Every moment with her felt like the world was spinning for us. The future looked like a place where I could finally breathe, finally belong. I didn't know it then, but I was standing in the golden hour of my life. And golden hours always fade. The first time I noticed it, she was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing her teeth. Just an ordinary morning. But her hand trembled, not like a shiver from cold, but like her body was forgetting how to be still. She caught me looking and smiled like nothing happened. I didn't ask. I should have asked. Days passed. Then weeks. Little things started to unravel. She got tired more easily. Took longer naps. Sometimes she'd stop mid-sentence, eyes clouded, like her thoughts were trying to catch up to her mouth. Once, during a walk through the park, she just stopped. Looked at the trees, then at me, and said, Everything feels like it's one step ahead of me. What do you mean? I asked. She shook her head. Nothing. I'm just tired. But it wasn't nothing. And I wasn't stupid. I started watching her more closely. At night, I'd lie awake, listening to her breathe, counting the seconds between each inhale. There was a heaviness in her sleep. She'd twitch, whisper things I couldn't understand. I told myself it was stress, that life had just caught up to her. But denial is a soft, slow poison. And I drank it like wine. One night, we were supposed to meet at the cafe where we first met. I got there early, brought her favorite cinnamon scone, waited. The sky turned orange, then blue, then black. She didn't show. I called. No answer. I went to her apartment. Her car was parked outside. Lights off. Door locked. My stomach dropped. I called again. Then again. Then once more, even though my hands were shaking. Finally, she answered. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Hey, where are you? I'm okay, she said, but she didn't sound okay. I couldn't move today. I'm sorry. That was the moment. That was when the fear fully wrapped itself around my chest. She told me the truth a few days later. We were sitting on her couch, rain tapping the windows, her knees tucked under her sweatshirt, hands fidgeting with the strings. It's neurological, she said. They don't know exactly what it is. Some kind of degenerative disorder. My heart cracked. How long have you known? A year. Before I met you. You knew and didn't tell me? She looked down. I didn't want to be someone's burden. I didn't want pity. And then, I met you. And it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could pretend I had more time. I couldn't breathe. My hands clenched into fists and relaxed over and over. I wasn't angry, I was shattered. Why no? I asked. Because I'm getting worse, she whispered. And I don't know how to keep pretending. I stayed the night. I held her like the world might end. And in some small way, mine already had. Every time she closed her eyes, I watched like I was afraid she wouldn't open them again. Over the next few weeks, I became her shadow. I went with her to appointments. Sat in sterile waiting rooms that smelled like antiseptic and despair. Watched doctors speak in terms and timelines they thought sounded hopeful. But I saw through it. She began to fade. Not just physically, emotionally too. She pulled back. Grew quieter. She'd stare at old photos for hours, barely speaking. Sometimes, I'd find her crying in the shower. She'd say it was nothing. But grief was in everything now. One night, she told me she felt like a ghost in her own body. I can feel myself disappearing, she said. And I don't want to drag you down with me. I took her hand and placed it over my chest. As long as this beats, you're not disappearing. You hear me? You're still here. She nodded, but I saw it in her eyes. She didn't believe that anymore. The turning point came a month later. She was in the kitchen, trying to cook breakfast, her favorite comfort ritual. I walked in just as she collapsed. Her knees gave out like a puppet with cut strings. The skillet clattered to the floor. I caught her just before her head hit the counter. Her lips were blue. Her eyes unfocused. I screamed her name. At the hospital, they stabilized her. Ran more tests. More scans. More words I didn't understand. I sat beside her bed, her fingers limp in mine. Machines hummed. A nurse walked in and told me I should get some rest. I didn't move. I couldn't. The woman I loved, the light, the chaos, the color, was slipping through my hands like water. And I was drowning. When Emily came home from the hospital, something inside me didn't. I left a part of myself in that sterile room, the part that believed life would ever feel normal again. I moved through the world like a dimmed version of who I used to be. Friends called. I didn't answer. Work emailed. I ignored everything. All I cared about was keeping her safe, keeping her here, keeping her mine, even as she slipped further away. Mornings became the hardest. I'd wake up before her, watching her chest rise in soft, uneven breaths. Sometimes her face twitched like she was fighting something in her dreams. I'd hover a hand above her cheek without touching, afraid my touch might break her, afraid my absence might break me. People talk about losing themselves like it's some poetic metaphor, but I lived it. I stopped shaving. Stopped eating properly. My reflection looked like someone who'd been abandoned by the world, hollow eyes, slack jaw, a man made of shadows instead of skin. I knew Emily noticed because she'd try to smile at me, even when she barely had the strength to get out of bed. "You're scaring me," she whispered one night as I sat beside her, staring at nothing. "I'm fine," I said, but my voice cracked, betraying me. "You're disappearing," she murmured. "Please don't disappear before I do." Her words shattered something fragile inside me, something I had been holding together with denial and sleepless nights. I turned away so she wouldn't see the tears. But she always saw more than I meant to show. Still, I refused to give up. When the doctors said the condition was progressing unpredictably, I heard a different message: fight harder. I started researching. Late nights turned into early mornings. Medical journals, experimental treatments, patient forums. I devoured them all until the lines blurred and my eyes felt like sand. Every new piece of information became a rope I clung to. Every uncertainty became an enemy. I didn't care if I was losing myself as long as I didn't lose her. One night, while she slept, I looked at the scattered papers, printouts, and notes covering our dining table. I felt my heartbeat hammering in my skull. There had to be something the doctors missed. Some reason behind this. Some thread to pull. And then I found it, a hint so small I almost overlooked it. A pattern in her medical reports that shouldn't have been there. A discrepancy none of her doctors mentioned. My shadowed mind sharpened instantly. There was more to her condition. Something hidden. Something wrong. I wasn't just losing her. Someone, or something, was letting her slip away. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Even if it meant becoming someone I no longer recognized. Even if I had to burn through the darkness to find the truth. It started with a name buried in her medical file, a specialist listed on an early scan, someone we'd never met. Dr. Malcolm Crane. I remembered asking about him months ago and being told he was just a consultant. But now, staring at the report again under the dim kitchen light, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The scan he reviewed? It was the only one that was never repeated. The next morning, I drove to the hospital, eyes bloodshot, heart pounding. I wasn't polite. I wasn't patient. I demanded answers. Of course, no one wanted to give them. Bureaucracy always hides behind silence. But I didn't care. I found a nurse who'd once smiled kindly at Emily when we were there. I pulled her aside. "Tell me about Dr. Crane," I said. "Please." She looked uneasy. "He left the hospital a while ago. Research department. Very private." "Private how?" "Let's just say not every trial he was part of went through proper review." That was all I needed. I drove 3 hours that day to find him. His lab was part of a remote research facility, funded by some private firm I'd never heard of. I didn't care. I stormed in like I belonged there. And when I said Emily's name at the front desk, something flickered in the receptionist's eyes: recognition. Guilt. That's how I knew I was close. They tried to stall me. But I refused to leave until he came down. When Dr. Crane finally appeared, he looked surprised, but not afraid. That was worse. "You shouldn't be here," he said calmly. "You saw her scans. You knew something. And you said nothing." He sighed. "Your partner was part of a pre-diagnosis genome mapping program. Her data helped us identify early markers for rare neurological decline." "You used her," I said, barely able to speak. "No, we studied her." "With consent." "She never consented to this," I snapped. "She trusted this hospital. She trusted you." His face didn't change. "It's complicated. There are things at play you wouldn't understand. Try me." And then he said it, the thing that broke me. Her condition may have been preventable. We had early-stage treatments. But they weren't approved yet. She wasn't selected. Not selected. Like she was a number on a spreadsheet. A failed trial. A discardable human life. I saw red. I wanted to punch him, to scream, to tear the whole building down. Instead, I took out my phone. "Say it again." "For the recording." He didn't. He just turned and walked away. That night, I filed a report with a lawyer friend from college. Sent the recording, the files, the discrepancies. Whistleblowing, they called it. But it wasn't about justice for me anymore. It was about saving her. Because in the folder Dr. Crane didn't mean to drop, I found something else. The name of the experimental drug, the formula, and the name of a lab that still had samples. It wasn't legal. It wasn't safe. But I was done playing by the rules. I wasn't her shadow anymore. I was her shield. And I would go as far as I had to, even into the fire. I used to be a good man. The kind who held doors open, paid taxes early, returned shopping carts in the parking lot. But good men live in safe worlds. Mine was burning. And to save Emily, I had to become someone I didn't recognize. The lab was in Atlanta, hidden in plain sight inside a biotech company working on cutting-edge neurological treatment solutions. Their website was shiny, clean, full of promises. I knew better now. I showed up at 2:30 a.m. No lights. No security at the back entrance, just a badge scanner and a quiet hum coming from inside. I'd studied the building layout from satellite images, cross-referenced it with old job postings that listed room numbers and departments. The internet tells you more than it should when you're desperate. I broke in through the service door using a code someone posted online months ago, a disgruntled former employee. They never changed it. Lucky me. I didn't feel like a criminal. I felt like a man pulling his soulmate from the edge of a cliff. Room 207. Sample storage. I found it. Rows of sealed metal containers lined with biohazard labels. I had no idea what I was looking at, but I knew the name of the drug and Rex 47. Emily's name had been listed under an early trial variant. I scanned labels like a madman until I found one. 2 vials. Small. Pale green. Hope in a bottle. I didn't know what to do next. I had the samples, but no plan, no doctor willing to administer something unapproved. Then I remembered someone, an ex-researcher turned holistic physician Emily had once met during a school fundraiser. Dr. Rose Alden. She'd gone rogue years ago, opened a private clinic. People whispered about her being a miracle worker. Or a lunatic. Sometimes both. I called her that night. Told her everything. To my shock, she listened. "You know what you're asking me to do is illegal," she said. "I know. If this goes wrong, she could." "She's already dying," I said. "At least let her fight." Silence. Then, softly, "Bring her in." Emily was too weak to protest when I told her. Her voice was fading more each day. Her skin, pale like moonlight. But when I showed her the vials, she stared at them like they were the last stars in a black sky. "You're not the man I met at the cafe," she whispered. "No," I said. "I'm not." She smiled, just barely. "You became someone else. I became someone because of you." The injection happened in a quiet room. No machines. No audience. Just the 3 of us, her, me, and Dr. Alden. She administered the dose with shaking hands. I held Emily's face in mine. "Come back to me," I whispered. For hours, we waited. She slept. I sat on the floor beside her, knees pulled to my chest, watching, praying, breaking. At sunrise, her eyes fluttered open. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. A full, real smile. "I don't feel heavy," she said. I cried for the first time in front of her. Let it all go. Not just relief, but everything I'd become. I wasn't the man who drank coffee at the corner cafe anymore. I had stolen, lied, threatened, broken laws and rules and pieces of myself. But I would have done worse. Because love doesn't just change us. It remakes us.